Welcome to Lecture on the Lawn. My name is Mark Kohler. That's Dawn Williams. That's Tyler Grimes. And there's a guy named Bob Geek around here. He's a geek tonight. Bob and I have never spoken to each other before he invited me to come and set up this panel. What he had gotten was a monthly email that I send out as the Roger Williams Educational Foundation, and apparently he found it interesting. And so out of the blue, without discussing it, he said, why don't you make a panel for June 10th? And you can bring in people from the foundation. And so three of us work pretty much in the foundation. We meet once a month. And we have a Zoom meeting, and we talk about Roger Williams on different themes. So tonight, we're going to have 4 presentations, all 15 minutes. And then we're going to have questions. And I will say, for the first time in my career, I actually have a script. Our third speaker tonight is Tyler Grimes, who is what was the title? You're a behavioral specialist, I believe. And she's become very interested in Salem and Roger Williams, and she's attended every monthly meeting we've had since actually for a year. Yeah. And so we gave her a complete open opportunity to talk about Roger Williams.
So I just want to say that, first of all, I'm thrilled not only to have the opportunity to be here to listen to everyone speak today, all these great minds, everything that they have to share, and I'm assuming that we all share a love for Rhode Island and its founder, and its history. It's also good to be able to actually see some of your faces and hear your voices. Without the ability to mute you or pause you or rewind you, so that I can write down the points that inspire me most. Though I'd like to take a moment to acknowledge the power of sharing knowledge. I must admit the last year and a half has supplied vastly more nuanced definitions of the term knowledge sharing. Knowledge sharing is a deliberate or active process of exchanging information that helps toward growth. The last year has really taught me that. There are so many people here today that have no idea how much they have helped me, a complete stranger, by sharing their knowledge, hard work, and passion without asking for anything in return, much in the spirit of Roger Williams. My primary intention for coming here this evening was to capitalize on the opportunity to listen to the differing perspectives on reframing Roger Williams. Since Mark has kindly included me by offering the time to use my voice, and since I'm not a scholar, I would like to share with you, I'm also not related to Roger. I would like to share with you an idea I have, or perhaps more precisely put, I would like to share an idea that has me. Of course, my use of the word sharing puts a heavy emphasis on that whole active exchange thing I brought up earlier. Just keep that in mind for later on. For the last year and a half, I've been writing a TV series involving Roger Williams, and each season is told through the eyes of 4 generations of the 17th century, some of which include Roger Williams, Meta Comet, and Bridget Bishop, among a few. But it didn't start out that way. It started out as a genuine fascination for a hero of mine. This hero is Roger Williams, the founding father I thought I knew, that founded the state I am born to be proud of, or I am proud to be born of. Wow. Both, right? They both apply. This state is Rhode Island, a state that gives us, who know it, everything we could possibly need. Separately, I have always had a fascination for the events of the Salem witch trials and a separate nagging confusion about King Philip's War. Like so many others, what humans are capable of as individuals and in groups triggers me in a primal, innate, and haunting generational post-traumatic stress that we can still vividly see and feel dwelling in and around us, with reminders of our own inevitable and perhaps genetic hypocrisy. present company excluded. It's just the concept. As I begin to feed my hunger for knowledge about New England's strange past, my taste for information began to develop, as more and more opposing and diverse perspectives flooded my perceptions. I began to question the stories told to me in school, just like Bob. I really started to ask myself a lot of questions about Thanksgiving, slavery, and other familiar formulas of general narrative patterns that were exposing themselves. I started asking myself questions like, why do I feel like I'm waking up from amnesia? Why did I learn in school about the Salem witch trials and the story of Roger Williams as separate stories, when in fact they're just seasons apart from each other? Are things ever as simple as good and bad? And where is the context here? What does our history mean for us? In our time of cancel culture, the clustering of like minds, and the tearing down of synthetic institutions that divide us, I cannot help but see the opportunity for an end to the old dualistic paradigm of separation. I decided the 17th century was way more than I understood it to be in global history. I pieced together as many events as I could. It was grueling. It's been a long time. This is the first time I'm coming out in public for like a whole year. Frankly, there were some events of the 1600s that I cannot ever unknow. There were just so many wars, so many significant cultural and societal problems like debt, climate change, real estate lines, bad business contracts, political corruption, actual wishes. Look up La Voisin, but if you have a weak stomach, don't. The strategic evisceration of an intricate web of indigenous confederations of tribes by separating them as a group, then from the land they thrived on for tens of thousands of years, and then separating them from their language and history. Did you guys learn about this in school? Yeah, no, I didn't. I definitely didn't. I had to actively seek it out, just like I'm sure you guys did. Did you know that one of the girls that triggered the Salem witch hysteria of the 1690s was in Salem living with extended family because her parents were brutally killed in front of her during the King Philip's War? I didn't know that until recently. My point here, though, isn't to judge her or the people who killed her parents. My point is that this all makes everyone involved much less good or bad, or this race or that, and makes the crisis of the situation much, much more gray. It's safe to say there is a general and yet visceral separation between those of us and those of the 17th century, one we're still trying to reckon with today, right now even, in this beautiful place. Otherwise, we'd be at home watching TV, right? Yet the theme of separation comes up all over the place in the 17th century, and indeed, once you have a way of seeing it, the theme pops up everywhere today in much of the same ways. History is always narrative. Story has a theoretical ground of itself, and there's no one better to serve as the microcosm of separation in the 17th century than our man, Roger Williams. Separation and Roger are inextricably linked by his beliefs and his expression of those beliefs, the way he interacted with those around him, the way he lived, and even the events around him. He lived a remarkably long life, during which time he watched the social order all over the globe turn on its head, altering the consciousness of the entire world, much like the way rivers flow. So these events that I referenced, they're not separate. There are ways of separating them, alchemically or categorically, scientifically, but actually they move like seasons into each other. Generational understanding of history is always narrative. And my favorite of these formulas that I reference is the story circle. So innate within every story, there are three types of stakes. There are the internal, the external, and the philosophical. Roger Williams, much like the century he hails from, has quite the story. In fact, he's involved in what I observe to be the most relevant story never told. There are countless versions of his story, sparking countless questions and continuing fascination to this day. Sometimes I wish I could give Roger Williams a high five for his relevance so many centuries later. It's really quite legendary. I can't shake the feeling that this was made to be a great TV series. And I know what you're thinking. It could be a movie, and I had the same thought at first. But I want to share with you the reasons why I'm choosing to make this a TV series. First, I'd like to talk about what makes a great TV series. and that would be the philosophical conflict of the show, its character arcs, and the structure of a season of a show, as well as the structure of the entire series as a whole. Regardless of the version of his story, Roger Williams deals with some legitimate philosophical dilemmas. This is what most stories struggle to create, and why so many stories end up being bland or forgettable. Built upon the philosophical conflict, there are internal and external conflicts. So this means that the entire show, if it's good anyway, from concepts to different external conflicts to character growth, ultimately stems from characters battling their own beliefs and value systems on the core level. So what are some of the philosophical ideas that my show, Separation, that's what it's called, what does it explore? So the way philosophical conflict grows and develops in a story is by the characters holding different philosophical beliefs that they act upon. So the characters in the first season of the Separation show, it's not called the Separation show, it's just called Separation, makes it much more silly. They show how their beliefs and actions fit within the philosophical conflict at the center of the show. Some of the best stories are centered around change. Character change is the gradual change of a character's philosophical beliefs, and then their external actions as a result of the change. In their internal beliefs, character change allows a philosophical conflict to grow and develop. And when a character believes certain things, then they take action within their world because of their beliefs. This action is taken because of beliefs. That's known as the plot. And the plot is really just characters, their beliefs and how they change and grow over time. Much like the way Bob was saying, I totally agreed with you that, you know, his just way of processing the world was ever growing. And in fact, that's what I admire so much about him. So some of these best stories are centered around this change, and the gradual change of the character's philosophical beliefs and then their external actions. So in Separation Season 1, I focused mainly on Roger Williams, and I really want to take a deep look into the characters I've chosen to focus on, but for tonight's purposes, I'll just stick with Roger. I want to show him in the world he lives in. So within Season 1, I'd like to show him clashing with two value systems, his old world and his new world. And that's a theme that I thought that he rejected for a long time, and upon more research, I realized that during the King Philip's War, you know, there really is again that clash of value systems where he is not sure, you know, who to empathize with most, I guess. But really focusing on that dilemma between his old value system and his new way of life that he's choosing, and he does this over and over and over again. It's I'm very excited to watch the whole thing unfold, and I hope everyone else is too. So as the season progresses, he becomes more and more emboldened. He begins to accept his new value system more and more, and the real world consequences of those actions. And the majority of the show is him adjusting his beliefs based upon the consequences of his actions. The culmination of the 17th century crisis, much like the culmination of the series, is really a place where things have been brewing for years, but as the series continues, they're finally coming to the forefront to influence all of the other characters' actions. So I want to focus on his growth, and that hopefully, I hope anyway, that with enough interest in collaborating with me, I will be able to give the different characters more and more nuanced points of view, really showing who those characters are and how they view the world in this moment in theirs. I'm just trying to cut it down because it was longer than I thought. So another thing I really am excited about exploring is pushing into the reality of the burden of leadership And anyone who knows anything about the Joshua Varon case, I find it completely fascinating. Does anyone know about that? The Varon case? So right away when he started his settlement, it was like put your money where your mouth is right away. There was a man who brutally beat his wife for going to church services without him. He didn't want to go to church, and Roger believed in liberty of conscience. And the founders really, I can imagine, struggled and debated over what to do about this because of the idea of liberty of conscience and the implications of how they would react to that as this city. So the only other thing that I wanted to say is we don't have to agree with the character or Roger to understand the motivation for the actions they take, the way they choose to live. But this is why stories can be so philosophically impactful to us. Philosophical theory only takes you so far. What makes things really interesting is seeing someone act on a set of ideas. And Roger Williams' story is a wonderful opportunity to do that, I believe. So sharing and examining ideas within a more human context is my aim here. And anyone that's interested, please don't hesitate to reach out and give me your perspective on any of the events. Basically, it's imperative to me that the story is written by anyone who wants to be a part of the story. And it can't just be told under the highest bidder or the studio with the handsomest actor on contract. But I've let it out into the world, so if we're not careful, it will be. So help me write the story. I would appreciate it. And thank you for your time.
You want to answer questions now or later?
Do you have any questions for me? I'm not knowledgeable enough to answer
I didn't catch your name.
My name's Tyler Grimes. Any other questions? That's okay. No, that's okay.
Is your series in production now, or is it airing?
No, I think basically what I'm doing is I'm working on the pilot. I'm really focusing on that. Before I worked on the pilot, though, I really had to tighten up, all of the story beats that I wanted to cover. And hopefully with the pilot, I'll be able to create enough interest to have more and more perspectives and people joining me. And maybe we can make it ourselves or get a grant through a guild so people can be paid to help me, because that would be wonderful if I could do that. Any other questions?
Will you be using local actors and actresses?
It really depends on the interest. I would like that. I would like to give the opportunity to Rhode Islanders of every culture. Any other questions? Thank you so much for your time, everybody.
Well, Tyler, I do hope you can write that all down. I thought that was one of the best open-handed discussions about values, history, and stories I've ever heard. Now I'm going